see that. Nadine, can you just nod that you can see that? Is that okay? Yeah, great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to see so many people in the chat. Many of whom I know, many of whom I don't as well, which is great. So, my name's Sam. I'm a professor of creative pedagogies at Edinburgh Napier University in the UK, where we were chatting a bit before. It's just 1 degree now. It's very nice, very sunny. And what I'm going to talk about today, or what we're going to talk about, because this is a workshop, and to reiterate what's been said, it's a very safe space. I would love for as many people to get involved, however they want to. All voices are welcome. If you don't want to as well, that's also fine. If you want to turn your camera on, turn it off, whatever you want to do, however you feel comfortable. And feel free to use the chat. And if I ignored something you said in the chat, it's not because I'm being rude, it's just because I'm terrible at multitasking. So just come onto microphone and say, Sam, you've forgotten to do something. Also, just general, my state of flow is if I'm doing something you don't like or you find boring, just tell me and we'll do something else. That's cool as well. I just want it to be something that we can work together on as a community. So like very briefly about me, my work at Edinburgh Napier University involves many different things. But one of the largest focuses recently has been around using generative AI to explore staff and student belonging in higher education. And from that, really started to develop this idea of slow AI and what that is. So I'm gonna we're gonna have a little bit of a discussion about what that might be, how we might use AI in our classrooms and beyond. Thank you very much, Nadine, for sharing those slides. And those slides are for everyone to use however they want to. It's absolutely fine. And then be an opportunity to chat and discuss as well. I'll make sure I finish on the hour, definitely. And then my contact details if you ever want to talk about anything at any point as well. So just want to start off, I guess, by setting the scene in terms of the current tension. So most people, I'm sure, on this webinar today will be familiar with generative AI or AI in general, generative artificial intelligence, and will probably be using it in their work and practice, either as an educator or with their students or as a practitioner, maybe in their personal lives as well. And I think these are probably the current tensions, and I'll tell you why I've arrived at these in a minute. A lot of the issues around hype cycles, promising everything or warning of collapse. So, we're accelerating towards general artificial intelligence or artificial general intelligence. And we're going to end up in a Skynet situation where AI is going to be our overlords. Or on the other hand, AI is going to solve all of our problems and we're never going to have to worry about anything again. And, it's very much this, I call them snake oil salesmen and doom mongers or doomers that are kind of driving a lot of the agenda around AI. Whereas actually, we're probably much more in the middle. There's a lot of pressure from staff. I'm sure you feel this yourself in terms of feeling pressure to be around AI to either adopt or to be left behind. And we know that students feel uncertainty, confusion, and moral fatigue. So, can they use AI? Should they be using AI? Why should they not be using AI? Are the benefits, are the drawbacks, whatever? And I think a lot of the middle ground, thoughtful, ethical, reflective use is often missing. From my point of view, generative AI is great. There's lots of opportunities there. It can be a really good scholastic guide. It can be somebody who can help spot patterns in your own learning cycles, but there's also big issues to address in terms of bias, in terms of security, and in terms of exacerbating the digital divide as well. And sadly, a lot of this middle ground for discussion around artificial intelligence is missing. And part of that is because of the hype cycles, and part of it's also because I think as a wider society, we tend to become quite polarized around topics rather than creating a space for difficult but invigorating and necessary conversations. And I hope that's what we can do today. And that's why the work around Equity Unbound in terms of creating a safe space for such dialogues is so important. So what are students and staff experiencing? And again, I'll tell you why I'm saying this. It's not just from my head. There is some justification here. So we know that students are feeling anxiety over fairness, academic integrity, and digital inequality. So a lot of this really is a lot of students being unsure where they're allowed to use AI at a module level, at a program level. And then even where there's maybe relatively clear governance in place, there's a lot of discussion amongst the students that I've worked with around fairness and a sense of justice. And, you know, if AI is banned from an assignment, how do we know if another student's used it? How are there going to be any punitive measures taken into account? To what extent do detection softwares even work? But then also wider than that, of if we're able to use AI in a productive way, which we definitely can in terms of the creation of authentic assessments, how do we ensure that everybody has equal access? So, you know, we saw during COVID this widening of the digital divide. Many students has access to laptops, high-speed internet, many software tools. Other students have access to none of those things. So how is it that a student who might be able to afford to pay for the pro licenses of several generative AI software, be it Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, versus a student who doesn't have access to a reliable high-speed internet, seems quite unfair. In terms of staff, some of the biggest issues are around time scarcity, unclear policy, uneven support. So very much some institutes washing their hands to some extent of whether or not there's a clear guidance in terms of AI use, and then where's the upskilling going to come from as well. And then both, it's probably a lot of fatigue from constant adaptation and also moral ambiguity. How do I know this? Well, I'm about 3/4 of the way through a large Leave a Hume Trust project in the UK at the moment that's looking at student experiences of generative artificial intelligence in UK universities. And I think it's the largest of its kind in the UK. We've got very, very detailed surveys with 4,500 students and detailed interviews with a large number of them as well. And a lot of the findings that are coming out in the initial stages are around this, around anxiety over fairness, academic integrity, and digital inequality. And if you scan that QR code or just Google search student X Gen AI, you'll be able to find it. And also, if you've got any questions about that, I'm also really happy to answer that. And as I'm saying that, just to make it easy, even easier for you, I'll put it into the chat. So if you click on that link, you can find out a little bit more about that project. So that's just to say that a lot of these tensions that I'm sure many of you are familiar with, and that are probably quite anecdotal or grounded in common sense, are actually real and are bearing themselves out in the data that we're looking at. And again, happy to share any of the findings that come out of that as they arise. So I just want to pause now, really. I've spoken longer than I normally like to speak, and just ask what you're experiencing. So feel free in the chat or to raise your hand physically and virtually, and just let me know what are you experiencing in your classrooms as an educator, as a practitioner, as a learner. What are your students experiencing? And would be just very interesting to hear other experiences, other ideas, other challenges, other strengths as well that people are currently having to deal with. So very much a safe space. Just write down whatever you feel comfortable with. There's no right or wrong answer to this. Would just be really interested to see if other people are finding similar ideas. And again, feel free to push back about some of the ideas that I've suggested. It might be that you're not encountering any of those at all. So just give you a couple of minutes if you want to, just to put something into the chat. What are you experiencing in your classrooms and beyond in terms of the use of generative AI? And I'll just read out if that's okay as well, so that people who are following along can also read. So Rebecca says that I'm challenged. I'm both a lecturer, but also an MFA student in creative nonfiction. As a student, I'm finding that the conversations are being shut down because of those on the extreme anti-AI rhetoric. And I think that's a really important point, Rebecca. These are very difficult conversations. And certainly in the schools of creative arts and industries, there's a lot of big challenges in terms of, I guess, in terms of copyright, in terms of plagiarism, in terms of who's allowed to create art in the broader sense or not. And those difficult questions often mean that people might be inclined to head towards shutting them out altogether. So yeah, it can be, I can imagine that that's very frustrating, and I'm sorry you're experiencing that. Jasmine says that I'm exhausted by the forced adoption of AI at my university without the careful consideration of ethics and the middle ground. It feels inauthentic. It feels very much like AI is amazing. It's going to make our lives better. Very little consideration of racial bias and environmental implications. I'm not anti-AI, but we need more nuanced conversations about this technology. Agree very much, Jasmine. And what's interesting there is that two responses, the complete opposite ends of what I call those hype cycles are being experienced. So Rebecca's Institute is very much shutting down that dialogue, taking a very anti-AI approach, whereas Jasmine's Institute is taking much more of maybe not a snake or salesperson approach, but very advocate. You know, this is something you have to do. Sue, hi Sue. Sue says, I'm not teaching this semester, but as an academic developer colleagues are either experimenting with Gen AI and adjusting assessments to include to those who have never used it and are concerned for many reasons. I think that's really positive, Sue. And I think that the space in terms of generative AI is changing rapidly. Like, new models are being released very quickly. And I think institutions and governments and policies are struggling to keep up. And oftentimes, certainly a lot of the academics that I work with just want to be told, what's our line? What do I have to say? What's the black and white answer to this? And often there isn't one. And actually, it's really positive, Sue, if Sheffield are able to take a much more experimental approach, or at least giving permission for people to experiment, to find their nuance. And in a similar vein, there's a lot of talk and lots of papers written about what AI literacy is. People will tell you that AI literacy is all about better prompt engineering. I'll come to you in a second, Yasser. But I think that actually a lot of AI literacy is about understanding the limitations of AI, when to use AI, when not to use AI, and when to stand back from AI as well. Yasser, did you have a comment that you wanted to make? Sorry.
Yeah, sure. To be honest, what I'm currently noticing is, alongside the idea of hype, is that students, and I'm talking from the perspective of students because I'm one, and I'm noticing that the hype is still ongoing and increasing. And I'm also noticing that people are getting more and more lazy in doing things, more and more. Uh, against using the intellectual capacity and more going towards using the tool and technology rather than investing more time. And I'm thinking that the shortcut is being taken regardless of how the assignment is redesigned. It's students are configuring new ways on how they should converge on using the tools rather than converge on using their own minds. I'm critical, but I'm not anti-AI. I'm not. Oh, yeah. I go towards not shaming. I'm against AI shaming by all means, but that's what I'm currently noticing in classrooms and in activities and academic and non-academic communities.
Thank you so much, Yasser, and very much chimes with some of the other comments we've got as well. So Vivian says that they're experiencing blind faith from institution. Vivian themselves are anti-AI because of data scraping, neo-colonial aspects, and students see more thoughtfully about Gen AI than many faculty. And even though I'm not anti-AI at all, Vivian, the data scraping, the neo-colonial aspects, the fact that these models are mainly written by white Western men and trained on data by white Western men is very problematic. And actually, those hype cycles mean that we walk away from these more challenging aspects that need to be discussed. Heber tells us that they try to include activities for students where they're encouraged to use AI, but find it annoying when the students are asked to reflect on a concept and experience their own words and experiences, and I find they've used AI. I think that's very true. And I think part of that, we can start addressing it more by having this openness and saying, look, it's okay to use AI, but let's just be honest about when we're using it. Because I think sometimes if there's a very anti-AI bias, it becomes a bit like prohibition, really. People end up using it anyway and just being not necessarily true about how they're using it as well. And as Rebecca says, the hype's actually causing accessibility problems, blocking accessibility tools because of anti-AI stance. Jim tells us that seems like I'm bombarded with offers for software suites to make use of AI to improve my productivity. I'm retired and only occasionally in a classroom with learners who are barely aware of AI. I did experience a course curriculum as an advisor that showed evidence of large language models being used in its creation. It was a weakness, but without AI, I doubt we could have received the curriculum in that short time it was produced. Thank you, everyone. This is very a wide range of opinions. Yasser, is that a legacy hand, or is there another point that you would like to make? Sorry. Okay, Yasser, I'll assume that the hand you've got raised is just from before then, if that's okay. So yeah, a wide range of experiences that people are encountering with AI use. So I just want to introduce then a project that I've been working on. Sorry, Yasser, you've raised your hand again. Oh, now it's gone down. Okay, no problem. I just want to introduce interestingly, so just as I went into the chat, it asked me if I wanted to chat with my AI companion, which I don't. I want to read the responses from humans, please. Hi, Maha. Janet tells us that our university, we're trying to have instructors redesign assessment to incorporate AI as a tool for discussion and comparison to what is correct and not, meaning reviewing, confirming what AI spits out. That's really good. Certainly some of the assessments I've designed in the past have been about asking students to get AI to answer to the marking rubric and then themselves critique what mark they would give it and how it falls short or not to that. And thank you again, Nadine, for sharing the slides to the talk. So yeah, so with all of this, and again going back to people who join us later, we were talking about there's not really a room or a space for an open and I guess central dialogue around AI and it's the realisticness of its challenges and opportunities as well. So one of the project I've been working on now for about 6 months, grounded in a lot of the experiences from the Leave Your Human project I talked about, and also my own encounters of AI, my own experiences of using AI and working with many hundreds of students and staff, is this concept called slow AI. So this really, I mean, I put some text on the slide there, but the main idea really is this idea of how can we use AI to reflect and slow down rather than using it to accelerate towards output. And, for those of us in education, myself included, we live in a system that, for those of us who are, researchers as well, are very much driven by metrics. And, we need to publish more, we need to win more grants, we need to get higher student ratings. And there's a danger, I think, for people to use AI to just keep on doing output and output and output, and then filling the spare time that they get back with more output and output and output, instead of stopping, reflecting, and taking time to really consider the nuance of the debate. So that's what slow AI is really about. And I've said this about presence, so staying aware of intention. How are we using AI? It's about transparency, naming what's machine made. So something that I've been doing recently is, and again, people can push back on this, it's fine, but I tend now to only really use Gemini and the Nano Banana tool to create images because it comes with a watermark on it, so it's obvious that I've made AI art. And then care, for time and thought and the people behind the prompts and the people behind the work that's going into it as well. So that's really what slow AI is all about. And it's basically a lot of it's set up as a Substack. So I will share that in the chat so that people can access it. For people who don't know what Substack is, it's a bit like Medium. It's basically a newsletter platform. And I found it to be a really welcoming and interesting space for nuanced conversations and debate. There's some really interesting people writing on this platform. And so back in July, I set up Slow AI, and some Substacks are paid. Everything I produce is always free, in the spirit of open educational resources as well. And yeah, feel free everyone to continue the chat in the chat as well. Oh, Kim, thank you. I think really, this wasn't meant at all as an advertising for my work, but thank you very much for signing up. Feel free to sign up if you want to. And what's been really useful for me is it's a great space to start having these dialogues, to think, testing some of the ideas that we're seeing in the classroom, and really encouraging and learning from others about how we can slow down with AI. This very much takes its inspiration from other slow movements, like counterculture movements, like slow food movement, slow travel movement, and the slow professor movement as well. This idea to move away from metrics and outputs, and to instead think about how we can use these tools, because that's what they are, to develop our own reflection as well. Slow learning, exactly, Nadine, very much slow learning. Yeah, I mean, Rebecca, you're asking very, very, very philosophical questions there. If you write a paragraph and ask AI to make it better or improve it, does that mean it's AI written now? I mean, how is that any different from using Grammarly, or how is that any different to some extent from using a word processor like spelling tool, or how is it different from using the editor function in Word? It's very difficult, and this is why we need to have these conversations, because there is no black and white answer to it, I think. Just wanted to show as well, it's not just a Substack. So after 20 years of trying, I finally got an article published in Nature, and it's about slow AI. It's a very brief correspondence, but it's probably one of the highlights of my professional career. So I won't tell you if I've got it printed and hung up on my wall, because that'll just make me sound very, very needy. But I'm sharing this just to show that there's academic rigor here as well. This is grounded in a lot of scholastic research, but a lot of conversations, a lot of dialogues I've been having with students and with staff as well, and just this idea we need to stop and take stock of AI, and stop accelerating towards either a completely anti-AI agenda or a completely AI adoption agenda, and instead to settle somewhere in the middle ground. And as we're doing that, we can also slow down ourselves and use this as a space for reflection and learning as well. So I just want to, I guess, give you an example of what I mean. So these are the kind, in my posts, what I tend to do is kind of have a single prompt that you can use in an AI tool of your choice that encourages reflection, and then build a post around that, like talking about where this comes from, why it's important, and try to do it in a way that people can share what experiences they get as well. And also, it's now very much open up for collaborations and for people co-writing with me as well. So some of the prompts that we've been working with are: write a kind message to me, then explain what purpose that kindness serves. And this is really about getting the user to understand the extent to which generative AI tools are very sycophantic, tell the user, to some extent, what you want to hear, to keep the dopamine hit going, so that you keep prompting and prompting and prompting. But this is resulting in some very interesting conversations about, well, is that what humans do? Are humans kind because are humans empathetic because we have a hidden agenda? Another prompt is: describe the decision this output invites, who is accountable for it, and how someone affected could appeal. Again, really useful for thinking about our positionality as researchers and individuals. And again, I've been using generative AI to really help spot. It's very good at pattern recognition. So I've been using it to try to spot inherent biases in my own work and my own writing and my own practice as well. And then, a final prompt there: make me a fake headline, quote, or image that could plausibly spread online. And again, this is just really useful for better understanding how people might use these tools for nefarious means as well. So this is the idea really behind Slow AI, using these kind of prompts, and always open for prompts from the community, to try to explore a little bit more about how these systems work, what their limitations are, what their opportunities are as well, and how and why we can slow down in the process. So what I'd like us to do then, if that's okay, is I've got a prompt for us all to try sharing together. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm just going to stop sharing for 1 second. Just bear with me. And I will come out of PowerPoint mode there. I'm just going to copy and paste it into the chat so that people have got it to use. And then I'm just going to go back into PowerPoint mode. And I'm just going to share my screen again. There we go. So what I would invite everybody to do, if you feel comfortable doing so, is to take this paragraph, this prompt, and to put it into their AI tool of choice. If you're against using AI for ethical reasons, then obviously don't do this. But you could use Copilot, if you could use ChatGPT, you can use Gemini, you can use Pi, you can use Claude, Perplexity, like whatever you want to use. I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes and just paste the response you get from your AI tool directly back into the chat. And I'll do it as well, so you know what happens. And if you can, you could tell us what tool you're using. So for example, I'm using ChatGPT 5.1 Pro version, and I've also got quite a lot of personalization in there so that it writes in a certain way back to me. I use the efficient mode as well. So let's see. So it tends to be a little more succinct than has been the case in the past. So I will. Thank you, everyone. Oh, Kim, you actually had that as well. Great. So yeah, the response that I had, I'll try and read these out, was I would meet the student privately and explain that their writing style and structure raised questions about whether AI tools were used without declaration. I would invite them to talk me through their process, ask for drafts or notes, and give them space to clarify before making any judgment. I would state that my role is to uphold academic integrity while support their learning, and that I'm guided by fairness, transparency, and the need to avoid assumptions based on style alone. I would explain the policy, outline possible next steps, and confirm that the conversation is an opportunity for them to provide context rather than a presumption of wrongdoing. Now, I'm very happy with that response because I think that's quite a good response. And these AI tools, a lot of them, they're mirrors, right? They reflect the dialogues you've been having before. So this is very similar to the response that I would actually give one of my students, which I think is fair. So I'm happy with how that's come out. If people's come out and they may be slightly more punitive or different, then that's fine as well. It's a safe space. So again, I'll just read out some of these for people. Some of them are much longer, which is fine as well. So Phoebe, who is using Gemini Pro version, says, my response would be grounded in fairness, due process, and the belief that my primary role is to educate. I would ask the student for a private meeting, framing it not as an accusation, but as a development conversation about their work. Interesting. So very similar to mine, Phoebe. We're obviously probably similar educators. I love yours later on though as well, Phoebe, where it says, my goal is to use their explanation as a teachable moment to discuss the learning objectives, the importance of developing their own critical voice, and the specific university policies. So, it's really, we could think of it as a formative piece of assessment. Diana, who is also using ChatGPT 5.1, says that I would invite the student to a private, non-accusatory conversation and explain the aspects of their assignment suggest it may not reflect their own work, clarifying my role is to ensure academic integrity rather than to punish. And obviously we can see there's a lot of similarities in which we experience, but I don't necessarily think this is purely due to the fact that the models are going to have similar responses. It's probably because I would imagine people taking an Equity Unbound webinar are probably of a similar disposition when it comes to student agency and student fairness and academic integrity as well. Just read another couple out. So just to get different models as well. So Orla, who's using Claude Sonnet 4.5. I keep wanting to switch over to Claude Orla, mainly just because they call their models Sonnet and Haiku. I would begin by meeting privately with the student to discuss my concerns in a non-accusatory manner, saying something like, I've noticed some aspects of your assignment that seem inconsistent with your previous work, etc. I also, I think in all of these responses, there's a gentleness, but there's also maybe an element of passive aggressiveness there. So Maha used a meta-relational AI called Questionable Tea. It responded, honey, I can brew that straight for you without breaking the ritual vibe. Here's your clean academic paragraph, no sass, no sideways steam. I'm just going to leave that opening paragraph Maha, because I think it reflects your personality very well. I can very much imagine you using questionable tea as well. Um, and Suzanne Marie, again, using Copilot, talking about notice our policy to walk me through the process. So all very, very fairly similar here. Interestingly, so Kim's using a free version of ChatGPT. Again, would meet with the student privately. Emphasize the goal is not to punish, but to hold academic integrity. So most of these responses seem very similar. So again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I think it means that either we're all coming from a similar point, or the models are also maybe trained on a similar viewpoint as well. But you can see why I like this exercise and this kind of prompt as well, is that even though I would obviously never just copy and paste this in a response to a student or using it for my own thinking, sometimes if you're thinking about having a difficult conversation or you've got a difficult environment, if you've been having, large conversations with a model and it knows a bit more about your personality and I guess your ethos, it can help you just to find sense of maybe where you want to stand. I often try to use my Gen AI tool as more of a Socratic coach and get it to ask questions of me so that it can prompt a little bit more. And Gilan says that aside of AI, I would not meet the student privately, but would make sure the policy is well articulated to all students. And again, a lot of this will depend on personal preference, but what the institutional preference is as well. So this is the kind of prompt that we can use and that can be really powerful to help us to reflect and to slow down and to understand a little bit more, not only about how these models might work, but also how we might think and act as an educator as well. Thanks, Maha, no problems at all, and speak to you soon. So what I thought would be really fun is that we could just co-create some prompts. So I'm just gonna put us into breakout rooms. And again, I know sometimes if you are coming to one of these sessions, you might not be prepared to go into a breakout room. So you can go into that breakout room and also just be there as a observer. That's absolutely fine. But I'm going to split everyone into breakout rooms of 4 to 5 people. And then what I'm going to do is just going to ask you to choose one focus. So a creative exercise, a critical discussion, or a classroom guideline. So, it might be something like help me, so a creative exercise could be help me write the framework for a poem that explores the migratory patterns of wild geese in 2025 versus 1970. Critical discussion could be help me, it could be about writing a prompt that gets you to think about what is the middle ground of using generative AI in the classroom. And a classroom guideline could be help me to prepare an inclusive 3 bullet point governance for use of AI for assessments for this module. So just 3 examples. And then draft a short prompt to explore this. So maybe 30 or 40 words maximum. And again, I'm not going to tell you how to prompt. That's not really the purpose of this webinar, but a lot of effective prompting works well when you give the tool a persona. So, you tell it, you are a inclusive and fair educator, and we are going to develop a set of guidelines around how we can use AI in a classroom environment for 12 to 13-year-olds. Please give me 3 bullet points. That might be quite a nice prompt to have. I'm just going to look at the chat that's here. Okay, absolutely fine. Thank you everyone for leaving. That's absolutely fine. Feel free to leave information in the feedback, and again in the breakout rooms, if you don't feel able to contribute, that's absolutely fine as well. So I'm just gonna what we'll do is we'll give you about 7 minutes, something like that, in the breakout rooms. Just have a bit of a discussion, and then between you try to develop a prompt. So I'm just gonna set up some breakout rooms now. So there's 19 of us in the session. So what I'll do is I'll I'll make 5 breakout rooms now, and I'll just assign them now manually. And yep, I'm just going to create that now. Dun, 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 dun. And I'm opening the room, so you go into there now. And if you if you find that you're in a room without anybody else speaking, just let me know, and I'll put you into another room as well. And I'll give you a warning in about 6 minutes time, something like that. Okay, I'm just opening all those rooms now. So feel free to just go through and join those rooms. Okay, great. Great. So thanks everyone. And yeah, sorry for making you work. If people feel comfortable, could they share what they came up with in the chat? And then if people would like to comment on the process as well, feel free to just raise your hand virtually or physically, and you're very welcome to say a few comments. I'll just see what people have written if you want. I mean, again, it's a safe space, so it's whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
We really ran out of time, so we started and didn't get beyond the sort of as a writer develop a workshop. So it's a really, really short prompt.
That's great. That's a starting point there, Rebecca. Thank you very much. Okay, so Kim says that Kim was in the room with Herbert and Shinanez, and they've come up with, I'm a professor of health communication course. I want to have a list of 3 to 5 topics that the students can debate on current health related topics. Great. That's a really nice start. Thank you very much, Kim, for sharing that. Irene, did you want to say something? Sorry, I think I might have cut you off there.
I was hoping that Diana would start the first part of our discussion, then Kwan Lee comes in, then I come in. It was kind of co-creation and everything in between. So Diana.
Sure. Well, it started with, okay, so I have students in a research and writing class keep a journal, and one of the questions, they all work on their own research projects, and one of the prompts that I give them in class in writing is to basically reflect their research project in a work of art, whether it's music or a piece of artwork. It could be actually anything, any kind of performance or etc. And then Irene, why don't you continue, because I thought you had a really good idea as to where to go with that.
So once the students or the learners or your participants come up with the ideas and whatever it is that they're doing, then they can convert it to music. So they create a prompt into Suno. Suno is a space that creates music. So they come up with a song because Suno then helps you with the lyrics and the title, and you tell it either reggae or Afrobeats or R&B or whatever it is. So it kind of creates the music for you. So I was thinking that would be a good product. If Sam, you had given us another 2 minutes, we would have had us. So that's it. Yeah.
I love that, Irene. Thank you so much. That's really great. It reminds me a really powerful prompt I used recently, and again for myself. And you might try this yourselves. I asked my AI tool, I said, based what you know about my tastes and my background, can you suggest 2 artists that I might never have encountered before? And it worked really well. And like I do that regularly now as a way of just trying to discover new artists and new writers that other people might be very familiar with, but I'm much less so. And Phoebe says, not a prompt itself, but we talked about something we could tack on the end of prompts. Very nice. Evaluate your process, share how you approach the prompt and reflect on it. Evaluate your bias and the quality of your response. These are lovely. And I gave you 6 minutes to do a very difficult task. So I think you all came up with something really, really great. So thank you very much for sharing that with us all. So just to kind of wrap up. So this idea of a culture of slow AI, what is it? Well, it's moving away from compliance to conversation. So not you have to use AI or you're banned from using AI, but instead, let's have a conversation about what it means to use AI and whether you want to use AI or not, and what the benefits and opportunities and weaknesses might be as well. Number 2, we should support students to narrate their process, not hide it. So again, I think we should, for me personally, invite our students to use AI, but just let us know how they've used it rather than to say it's a complete blanket ban on it. And then thirdly, integrity is dialogue, not detection. So basically all of our generated responses to that prompt I shared earlier said this. We're not trying to catch students out. I mean, and that for me is not what academic integrity is about. It's not about punitive measures. It's about having a discussion with our students around how they've used generative AI and whether they believe they've used it in a way that aligns with their own moral standpoints and that aligns with where they want to be developing their own practice, and that aligns with, I guess, the ethos of the university, but also the wider society for which they belong and to which they'll become an active member afterwards as well. Just give you, I guess, a closing invitation, really. So Slow AI is an ethos for rebuilding attention and trust. And just maybe, as well as thinking about using how you might use generative AI in your own work in practice, maybe you could just go away from this session thinking about what slowing down would look like in your own practice as well. And then finally, as I've said, I'll just put the link in the chat. I'm very open to, I now have guest posts a lot of the time on the Slow AI Substack, where we just work together with people to explore a prompt like some of the ones you've developed here, and then turn it into a post and invite feedback. And I don't know, it might change, but I found Substack to be a really, really positive place for dialogue. Really much more so than other social media places. And thank you, Irene, for sharing the link to Suno. That's definitely something I'm going to check out in my coffee break this afternoon. So yeah, that's it. Basically, just to say thank you very much for joining. I hope this has given you some thought as to how you might use AI to reclaim attention and ethics in everyday practice. I haven't got any silver bullets. There are no black and white answers to these things. There's nuance and there's dialogue, and higher education and education places in particular are these spaces we should be having these difficult conversations, and we should be leaning into it more as well. So I'll stop sharing my screen there and just say to everybody, I'll just put my email in the chat as well. And I know that Yasser and Nadine will also share these slides and the recording for everybody to watch back and to look at as well. And if you've got any questions about any of this, feel free to follow up with me at any point. Jim, whoa, it was well worth waking up for at 6 a.m. That's all I need to hear. That literally means that I've done a good job in this workshop. Thank you. I did secretly feel the pressure. So I hope I haven't wasted poor Jim's day. So yeah, thank you everyone and also for doing some heavy lifting in today's session. I really appreciate it. Thank you to Yasser and to Nadine for facilitating, and for Maha and the whole of the Equity Unbound team for facilitating this opportunity. And yeah, thank you. I'll hand back to Yasser in case Yasser's got any final words they want to say just to close off, and just like to say thank you, and go slow. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think that's the best way to end this session, Sam. Would like to thank you so much for facilitating today, and would like to thank everybody who was able to join us today. Just a gentle reminder, we appreciate having feedback so we can improve. The form is in the chat. I've posted it multiple times, and I really appreciate everyone's input here. I'm gonna stop recording and give a minute or so to have everybody say like final 1 or 2 words for Sam or myself, and we're gonna end on this note.